The restaurant was already full when the evening rush began. Plates moved fast, voices mixed together, and the smell of warm food filled the air. It was the kind of place people visited to relax after long days, not too fancy but not cheap either. The staff moved with quiet focus, each person knowing their role. Among them was a young woman wearing a simple apron, her hair tied back neatly, her steps calm and steady. She had been working there for a long time, and she knew the rhythm of the place better than most. She greeted guests with the same soft tone every time. No matter who walked in, she treated everyone with respect. Some noticed her kindness, others barely looked at her face. She didn't seem to mind. To her, the job was not about being seen. It was about doing things right. That evening, the glass doors opened again, and the mood of the room shifted slightly. A group of well-dressed people walked in, led by a man whose confidence filled the space before his voice did. His suit was sharp, his shoes clean, and his eyes moved around the room as if judging everything at once. People at nearby tables noticed him right away. Some whispered, recognizing him from business news and social media. He was known for being successful, loud, and proud of it. He didn't wait to be welcomed. He stepped forward and asked for the best table, speaking as if it was already his. The manager came quickly, smiling politely, and guided the group toward a large table near the center of the restaurant. The man sat down without saying thank you. His guests followed, laughing loudly, already ordering drinks before menus were placed. The waitress was assigned to that table. She approached with her usual calm, holding menus in her hands. She smiled and greeted them, asking how their day had been. The man barely looked at her. He waved his hand as if brushing away air and told her to hurry up. She nodded and placed the menus neatly on the table. From the start, nothing pleased him. The water was too cold. The menu options were too limited. The table was not close enough to the window. Each complaint was spoken louder than the last. The waitress listened carefully and apologized each time, even when the issue was clearly small. She took notes, repeated the orders to avoid mistakes, and walked away to handle them quickly. Other customers began to notice the tension. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations softened. The manager kept a close eye from across the room, ready to step in if needed. Still, the waitress handled everything herself. Her face showed no anger, no fear. Only focus dot when the food arrived. It looked perfect. Fresh, warm, and carefully arranged. The waitress placed each plate gently in front of the guests, describing the dishes the way she had done hundreds of times before. For a moment, things seemed calm. Then the man picked up his fork, took one bite, and frowned. He pushed the plate slightly away and called the waitress back with a snap of his fingers. The sound was sharp and disrespectful. When she returned, he leaned back in his chair and spoke loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "This is not what I ordered," he said, even though it was exactly what he had chosen. "Do you people even know how to run a restaurant?" The waitress checked her notes and spoke gently. She explained the order and offered to replace the dish if he preferred something else. Her voice was steady, not defensive. That only seemed to annoy him more. He laughed, a short, harsh sound, and looked at his guests. "This is what happens when places hire people like this," he said, pointing at her apron. "No skills, no class. Just trash serving food." The word hit the room like a dropped glass. A few people gasped quietly. Someone at another table shook their head in disbelief. The waitress froze for a second, the smallest pause almost unnoticeable. Then she lowered her eyes slightly and took a slow breath. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she said. "I'll bring you another dish right away." She did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She turned and walked back toward the kitchen, her steps still even. The man watched her leave with a satisfied smile, as if he had proven something important. His guests laughed again, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to speak up. In the kitchen, the noise of cooking continued like nothing had happened. Pans sizzled, orders were called out, and servers moved around quickly. The waitress placed the plate on the counter and stood still for a moment. One of the cooks looked at her face and frowned. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "I'm fine. Can you remake this?" The cook didn't argue. He had worked there long enough to know better. He started preparing a new dish right away. The manager approached her, his voice low. "You don't have to serve that table anymore," he said. "I can handle it." She shook her head gently. "No, I will finish." He looked at her with concern, but respected her decision. There was something about her calm that made people listen. When she returned to the table with the new plate, the man barely acknowledged her. He continued talking about money, power, and deals, speaking as if the entire room was meant to hear him. He bragged about companies he had taken over, people he had crushed in negotiations. Each story was louder than the last. The waitress placed the dish down and asked if there was anything else he needed. He waved her away without looking at her face. As she walked back, she noticed how quiet the rest of the restaurant had become. People were no longer enjoying their meals the same way. The atmosphere had changed. Still, service continued. Plates were cleared. Orders were taken. Life moved on. The man finished his meal and asked for the bill, making sure to mention that he expected a discount for his trouble. The manager handled the payment personally. No discount was given. The man complained, but paid anyway, leaving a few bills on the table without checking the amount. Before leaving, he stood up and glanced around the restaurant one last time. His eyes landed on the waitress as she passed by another table. For a brief moment, something unreadable crossed his face. Then he smirked and walked out, his guests following behind. The doors closed behind them, and the room slowly returned to normal. Conversations picked back up. The tension faded. The waitress continued working, collecting plates, refilling glasses, and thanking customers as they left. To anyone watching, she was just a server doing her job. No one would guess that the insult thrown at her that night would soon return in a way no one expected. And she knew it. She had known it the moment he spoke that word. She wiped down a table near the window and looked out at the streetlights outside. Her expression did not show anger or sadness. It showed patience, as if she was waiting for something that had already begun. That night was only the beginning. The next morning, the restaurant opened like it always did. Chairs were turned upright, tables wiped clean, and soft music played in the background. The memory of the previous night still hung quietly in the air, but no one spoke about it openly. People had jobs to do, and work did not stop for hurt feelings. The waitress arrived early, as usual. She tied her apron, washed her hands, and checked the reservation list. Her movements were calm, almost careful, as if every action had meaning. A few coworkers glanced at her, wondering if she was still bothered by what happened. She greeted them with the same gentle nod she always gave. During a short break, she stepped outside and sat on the low steps near the back door. The morning air was cool. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the noise of the city pass by. This was not the first time someone had looked down on her. It wouldn't be the last. What made this time different was not the insult itself, but who had said it. Inside the restaurant, the owner arrived. He was an older man with tired eyes and a kind face. He had built the place with years of effort and many mistakes. When he saw the waitress, he paused. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked quietly. She smiled slightly. "I did." He studied her face, searching for signs of pain or anger. He found neither. That somehow worried him more. Later that afternoon, The restaurant was less busy. Sunlight came through the windows, lighting up dust in the air. The waitress moved between tables, taking orders, listening to stories, laughing softly when customers joked. To anyone watching, she looked like she belonged there in the simplest way. But when the rush slowed, she went into the small office at the back. The door closed behind her. Inside, the noise of the restaurant faded. She took off her apron and placed it neatly on a chair. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a thin folder. The papers inside were old, but well kept. Agreements, numbers, signatures. She flipped through them slowly, stopping at one page. Her finger rested on a line that carried her signature. Written years ago. Back then, the restaurant had been close to shutting down. Bills were piling up. Staff were worried. The owner had tried loans, favors, and late nights. Nothing worked. She had been working there already, watching quietly. She believed in the place when few others did. She remembered the night she had offered help. It wasn't dramatic, just a conversation after closing time. She had savings from earlier work, money she had earned and protected carefully. She offered to invest, not to take control, but to keep the restaurant alive. The owner had hesitated. She insisted on staying out of the spotlight. No public announcements, no titles, just trust. That was how she became part of the foundation without anyone noticing. A soft knock pulled her back to the present. The owner stood at the door. "They were asking about you," he said. "Some people from a company." She looked up calmly. "Did they leave a card?" He handed it to her. The name printed on it matched the man from last night. She nodded once. "Thank you." The owner hesitated. "If this is about selling, I won't do anything without talking to you." She met his eyes. "I know." That evening, she stayed later than usual. When the staff left one by one, she remained, sitting at a corner table with the folder open again. She made notes on a small pad, her handwriting neat and steady. Her face showed focus, not stress. Across the city, the CEO sat in his office, talking loudly on the phone. He laughed as he described the restaurant. "Easy deal," he said. "The place is weak. The owner is tired. They'll fold." He didn't mention the waitress beyond a joke that earned more laughter from the people around him. Days passed. The CEO's people began calling the restaurant more often. They asked questions about ownership, property lines, and future plans. The manager directed all calls to the owner, who listened carefully but made no promises. The waitress noticed everything. She noticed when a stranger took photos outside. She noticed when a delivery was delayed without reason. She noticed when a regular customer mentioned rumors about the place closing. One evening, she overheard a conversation near the bar. Two men in suits spoke quietly, but not quietly enough. "They think they can resist," one said. "Pressure will fix that." She walked past them without reacting. Later, she wrote down what she had heard. At home, her apartment was small and simple. No signs of wealth, no luxury. She cooked a basic meal and ate alone, reading through documents again. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She planned. The owner called her late that night. His voice was tired. "They're offering money," he said. "More than the place is worth." She listened quietly. "And what do you want?" "I want to protect my staff," he replied. "This place is their home." She closed her eyes for a moment. "Then don't sign anything yet." The next day, the CEO returned to the restaurant. This time, he came alone. He chose a table near the window and looked around as if inspecting property he already owned. When the waitress approached, he looked up with mild surprise. "You again," he said. She smiled politely. "Good afternoon." He leaned forward. "Tell your boss to be smart. This place won't survive without help." She nodded slowly. I'll let him know you stopped by. Her calm unsettled him. He expected fear, maybe anger. He saw neither dot as she walked away. He watched her back with narrowed eyes. For the first time, something felt off. He couldn't explain it, so he brushed it away. The restaurant continued to operate as usual. Customers kept coming. Staff kept working. But beneath the normal routine, something was shifting. The waitress folded her apron at the end of the night and placed it in her bag. She looked around the empty room, then at the folder she carried under her arm. The game had already started. The man who called her. Trash believed power was loud and visible. He didn't realize that the quiet ones often moved the biggest pieces. And she was done waiting, Dot. The pressure did not arrive all at once. It came in small pieces, spread over days, easy to miss if someone was not paying attention. A delivery truck arrived late without explanation. A supplier suddenly asked for payment up front instead of the usual terms. A city inspector walked in during lunch hours, checking papers more closely than before. None of it was illegal. None of it was obvious. But together, it created weight. The staff felt it first. Conversations in the kitchen grew quieter. A few servers worried about their hours. One of the cooks asked the manager if rumors were true. The manager tried to keep things calm, but even he could not hide the strain in his voice. The waitress noticed everything. She watched how the owner stayed longer at his desk, rubbing his temples while reading emails. She saw how the manager checked the cash drawer twice at night. She heard the phone ring more often, always from unknown numbers. Each time, the answer was polite, careful, and short. One afternoon, while clearing a table, she overheard a regular customer speaking to a friend. They say a big company wants this place gone, the customer said quietly. Already making calls. The waitress paused for half a second, then continued wiping the table as if nothing mattered. But inside, she marked the words carefully. That evening, after closing, she stayed behind again. The lights in the dining area were dim. Chairs were stacked. The restaurant felt smaller without people. She sat across from the owner in the office, the familiar folder resting between them. They are trying to scare us, the owner said. But they haven't done anything illegal. She nodded. They don't need to. They want you tired. He gave a weak smile. It's working. She opened the folder and slid a page toward him. Then we stop reacting and start deciding. They talked for a long time. Not about pride or revenge, but about protection. About staff. About the future. She asked clear questions. He gave honest answers. When the conversation ended, he looked lighter, as if someone had lifted part of the weight. Across the city, the CEO grew impatient. Reports from his team suggested the restaurant was holding steady. Customers were still coming. No panic, no rush to sell. That bothered him. They should be calling by now, he said sharply. Increase the pressure. His assistant hesitated. We're already close to the line. He waved it off. No one will notice. Small places never fight back. The next day, a letter arrived at the restaurant. It warned of possible zoning changes in the area. Nothing confirmed, but enough to cause worry. The owner read it twice, then passed it to the waitress. They want you to blink, she said. I might, he admitted. She looked at him steadily. You won't, not today. She stepped outside and made a call. Her voice was calm, businesslike. Short sentences. Clear requests. When she hung up, she stood for a moment, watching people walk past the windows, unaware of the quiet fight happening inside. That night, the CEO returned again, this time with a different tone. He was polite, almost friendly. He ordered a simple meal and waited. When the waitress approached, he smiled thinly. You're still here, he said. She smiled back. Yes, he leaned forward. You should think about your future. Places like this don't last. She met his eyes. Some do. Her answer annoyed him. He finished his meal quickly and left without comment. Over the next few days, the pressure increased, then stalled. Some calls stopped. One supplier returned to normal terms. A scheduled inspection was quietly canceled. The shift was subtle, but noticeable. The owner noticed too. What did you do? He asked. She shook her head. Nothing loud. He laughed softly. You always say that. The CEO sensed something slipping. He didn't know what, only that the situation was no longer moving the way he expected. He reviewed files late into the night, searching for leverage he had missed. That was when he noticed a name. It appeared in old paperwork connected to the restaurant. Not in the headlines. Not in the public listings. Just once, in a document related to early funding. He frowned and leaned closer to the screen. Who is this? He asked. His assistant checked. No public profile. No listed assets tied to the restaurant. Probably nothing. But the CEO didn't like unanswered questions. He ordered a deeper check. Phone records. Business ties. Anything that explained why a simple restaurant was resisting so calmly. Meanwhile, the waitress continued her shifts as usual. She laughed with customers. She helped a new server learn the menu. She stayed late to clean. To everyone around her, she was just doing her job. One evening, a young coworker asked her quietly, "Are we going to be okay?" She looked at the worried face and smiled. "Yes. How do you know?" "Because fear only works when you let it." The coworker nodded, comforted without fully understanding why. The CEO's investigation returned little. The name led nowhere obvious. No scandals. No wealth records. No connections that made sense. That frustrated him even more. Then who's pulling the strings? He muttered. He decided to force a meeting with the owner. Formal. Direct. No more games. The request arrived the next morning. A business meeting. Neutral location. Lawyers present. The owner showed the message to the waitress. His hands shook slightly. "This is it," he said. She read the message carefully, then nodded. "Yes, it is. Should I go?" She looked up. "We will go." He blinked. "We?" She closed the folder and stood. "It's time." The owner didn't ask more questions. He trusted her. He always had. That night, the restaurant was quieter than usual. The waitress finished her shift, folded her apron, and placed it carefully in her bag. She didn't hang it in the locker, like always. Before leaving, she stood in the center of the empty room and looked around. Tables, chairs, lights. People's laughter still echoed faintly in her memory. Tomorrow. Things would change? The CEO believed control came from pressure and noise. He believed people folded when pushed hard enough. He was about to learn that real control often waits quietly, hidden in plain sight, and the waitress was done standing behind the scenes. The meeting was set for the next afternoon in a quiet office building across town. It was not a place meant to impress. Plain walls, glass doors, and a long table in the center of the room. Everything about it felt neutral, almost cold. The kind of place where decisions were made without emotion. The owner arrived early. He sat at the table with his hands folded, staring at the surface as if trying to steady himself. Papers were stacked neatly in front of him, but he hadn't opened them yet. He kept checking the door. When it opened, the waitress walked in beside him. She was not wearing her apron. She wore simple, clean clothes, nothing expensive, nothing dramatic. Her posture was straight, her steps calm. She greeted the receptionist politely and walked into the room, as if she belonged there. The owner looked at her and took a slow breath. Somehow, Her calm made the room feel smaller, easier to manage. A few minutes later, the CEO entered with 2 lawyers. He looked confident, relaxed, already smiling. He shook hands with the owner and sat down without waiting for an invitation. When his eyes moved to the waitress, his smile paused. "You?" he said. Surprised, Dot. She nodded. "Good afternoon." He leaned back in his chair and laughed lightly. "Is this a joke?" The owner shifted uncomfortably. Before he could speak, the CEO waved his hand. "Never mind," he said. "Let's get this over with." The lawyers began laying out documents, offers, numbers, promises of smooth transitions and future opportunities. The CEO spoke with confidence, explaining how selling was the smart choice, how the restaurant would not survive future changes, how resistance would only make things harder. The owner listened quietly, his face tight. He glanced at the waitress once, unsure. She said nothing. The CEO noticed and smirked. "You're quiet today," he said to her. "Lost your voice?" She met his eyes calmly. "I'm listening." He shrugged and continued. "This is a fair deal. More than fair. You take the money. You walk away clean. No stress." One of the lawyers slid the final document across the table toward the owner and placed a pen on top. Dot. The room fell silent. The owner stared at the paper. His hand hovered near the pen, but didn't move. Sweat formed on his brow. Years of work, memories, people who depended on him. The waitress reached out and gently pulled the document back toward herself. The CEO frowned. "Excuse me?" She opened the folder she had brought with her and placed several papers on the table, lining them up neatly. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," she said. The lawyers exchanged glances. The CEO leaned forward, irritation flashing across his face. "What misunderstanding?" he asked. She slid one document toward him. "This one." He picked it up and scanned the page. His expression shifted slightly. "That's old," he said. "It means nothing now." She nodded, then read the next one. He did. The room changed. The confidence drained from his posture bit by bit. His smile disappeared. He sat upright, eyes moving quickly across the lines. His lawyers leaned in, whispering to each other. The owner watched, confused, his heart pounding. The CEO looked up slowly. "This isn't possible," he said. She folded her hands. "It is." One of the lawyers cleared his throat. "According to these documents, you are listed as a silent partner." She nodded. "From the beginning." The CEO's face tightened. "You're a waitress." She tilted her head slightly. "I work there, yes. That doesn't make you a majority investor," she finished calmly. "Which means this offer should have come to me first." Silence filled the room. The CEO looked at the owner. "Is this true?" The owner swallowed and nodded. "Yes." The CEO leaned back, stunned. "You let her." "I trusted her," the owner said quietly. The CEO laughed once, sharp and humorless. "So this whole time?" "Yes," she said. "The whole time." He clenched his jaw. "You stood there and let me insult you." She looked at him steadily. "I didn't let you do anything. You chose your words." His lawyers whispered urgently, flipping through pages. "This changes things," one said. The CEO raised a hand to silence them. His voice dropped. "What do you want?" She didn't answer right away. She looked at the owner, then back at the CEO. "I want you to stop," she said simply. "Stop what?" "The pressure, the rumors, the calls, everything." He scoffed. "And if I don't?" She slid another paper across the table. "Then this becomes public." He glanced at it and stiffened. "Those tactics you used," she continued. They don't look good written down. The CEO stared at her, anger and disbelief mixing in his eyes. You planned this. She shook her head. You did. I just paid attention. The room was quiet again. Finally, the CEO pushed his chair back and stood. This meeting is over. He looked at the owner. You got lucky. Then his eyes returned to the waitress. You surprised me. She stood as well. People usually do. He left without shaking hands. His lawyers followed quickly, their faces tense. When the door closed, the owner let out a long breath and sank back into his chair. I didn't know how you were going to do it, he said. But I knew you would. She smiled faintly. We're not finished yet. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Cars passed. People walked. Life continued, but for the first time, the balance had shifted. The waitress picked up her folder and headed for the door. Tomorrow, the restaurant would open like always. Only now, the man who called her trash knew exactly who had been standing in front of him all along. The restaurant opened the next morning just like it always had. The lights came on, the doors were unlocked, and the smell of fresh food slowly filled the room. To anyone passing by, nothing looked different. No signs, no announcements, no celebration. But inside, everything felt lighter. The owner arrived early and stood near the counter, watching the staff come in one by one. He smiled more than usual. His shoulders were no longer tense. When the waitress walked in, wearing her apron again, he nodded at her with quiet respect. You didn't have to come in today, he said. She smiled. I wanted to. She tied her apron and went straight to work, greeting customers, refilling cups, and helping the newer staff without drawing attention to herself. No one would guess what had happened behind closed doors the day before. That was exactly how she wanted it. By lunchtime, the restaurant was busy. Regular customers filled their usual tables. Laughter returned to the room. The fear that had been sitting quietly in the corners was gone. People could feel it, even if they couldn't explain why. Later that afternoon, the owner called a short staff meeting. Everyone gathered near the kitchen, some nervous, some curious. I just want to say something, he began. This place isn't going anywhere. A few people let out small breaths of relief. Others smiled. There were challenges, he continued, but we handled them, together. No details. No names, just reassurance. That was enough. The waitress stood near the back, listening. She watched the faces around her relax. That mattered more than any credit. Across town, the CEO sat in his office, staring at his desk. The plans he had made were now useless. His team avoided his eyes. The restaurant deal was dead. Worse, the information she held meant he had to step carefully from now on. For the first time in a long while, he felt uncertain. He replayed the moment in his head. The calm way she spoke. The way the room changed when the truth came out. The word he had used without thinking. Trash. It didn't sound so powerful anymore. Days passed. The restaurant continued to do well. A local food writer mentioned it in an article. New customers came in. Old ones returned more often. The staff worked with renewed energy. The waitress kept her routine. Work, home, quiet evenings. Simple meals. She didn't upgrade her life. She didn't change her habits. Power had never been about showing off for her. One evening, a young server sat beside her during a break. You always stay calm, the server said. How? She thought for a moment. Because shouting doesn't build anything. The server nodded. Thinking about that. A week later, the CEO walked past the restaurant. He slowed his steps, but didn't go inside. Through the window, he saw her clearing a table, laughing softly with a customer. She didn't look at him. He realized then that the moment had passed. Whatever chance he had to control the situation was gone. He walked away without being noticed. That night, after closing, the owner locked the door and turned to her. "I owe you more than I can say," he said. She shook her head gently. "You trusted me when it mattered." "That's rare," he replied. She picked up her bag and looked around the empty room. "This place deserves to stay." He smiled. "It will." As she stepped outside, the streetlights glowed softly. Cars passed. Life continued, unaware of the quiet victory that had taken place. She walked home at her usual pace. No rush, no pride, just peace. The next day and the next, she returned to work. She served food. She listened to people's stories. She helped where help was needed. Some people lead loudly. Others lead without being seen. The man who once judged her by her apron learned a lesson he would never forget. Respect is not about position, and the strongest people don't need to announce who they are. The restaurant remained open, not because of money or pressure, but because someone believed in it enough to protect it quietly. And she went on living her life the same way she always had, steady, unseen, and unbreakable